Escape is sometimes the only option. In times of danger, your body is known to go through a brutal, automatic reaction called the fight or flight response. Most of us tend to convince ourselves that we would pick the former, when in reality the latter is usually the smartest way to survive. But what if you run too far? What if the distance you carve between yourself and all the things you're afraid of ends up having terrors of its own? Where will you run to now?
There's that first moment, the first flush, the falling in love, and then you got to let it cook and see if you're still in love in the morning, because it's a form of showing off. But it's also a form of sharing. You want to say, hey, I caught this moment with people, but it's a wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful feeling. It's what everybody who writes or paints or composes feels, or else they wouldn't go on with it. If you didn't get those moments, you couldn't put up with the rest of it, the loneliness and the tedium and the endless amounts of work, the sweat.
This is a story of a quiet world, of someone whose voice cannot be heard, someone who has lost connection to a bleak and unrelenting universe. So he chooses to push deeper, to keep running from the forces he can't control, until he loses control of it all. This is a concept album released in 2015, the debut album of a band called Native Construct. An album that made such an impression on the scene that it's still highly regarded, like a bolt of lightning that struck us and then left us blind. At the time of the release of this video, this is their first and only album, and this is over a decade after Quiet World came out. Over the years, they have never officially stated that they've disbanded, and even have hinted that more is to come, but until that day, Quiet World remains one of the most iconic one-hit wonders of the prog metal world.
Oh, thank you. I think I shall visit him.
Of course. He's mad, too.
But I don't want to go among mad people.
Oh, you can't help that. Most everyone's mad here.
So why did this album make such an impact on us back in 2015? There are so many moments that have extravagant, over-the-top crescendos and soaring orchestral elements, which give this overall feel of being epic and genuinely theatrical. The word opera wouldn't feel entirely misplaced as a descriptor here. The inspiration nods to both Queen and Meatloaf with the way the vocals are handled, the way the story unfolds, and the harmonies that swell through every beautiful moment. Gabe Solomon admits that part of the reason the album leaned in the direction of show tunes and operatic manner is due to the vocalist, Robert Eden's particular style of singing. This couldn't have been done with just any vocalist, and that's obvious to anyone who has heard the album. Robert, as a lover of musical theater, was heavily inspired early on by Les Mis and other more theatrical styles. And I won't exaggerate in saying that this is the reason the album has developed a cult following. Lyrically, the album is intended to be open-ended and up to interpretation, as most interesting lyrics usually are. Leaving space for the listener to draw their own conclusions and have to engage with the concepts brings a much more rewarding experience than outright telling you how you should feel. However, the introduction to the album, the song Mute, is meant to be a blistering, powerful, and brutally honest establishment of exactly what this project is about. We are promptly pummeled with blast beats, a soaring melody by a host of orchestral instruments, and these robotic, vocoder-drenched vocals that scream, "I am silence." Then the concept is immediately told to you in almost comical straightforwardness. I left it all to escape that misguided place. I left it all to erase that familiar face. I'll mold a world to accept my condition. And the picture is painted with quite a precise brush. The story of a mute boy with unrequited feelings for a woman, and her familiar face haunts him, and in his misery he retreats into his own reality, one that he can control, one where he can be safe. And we get to hear his creations chant along, saying, "He's created us from a point of view we did not choose. We are all broken." In a sing-song manner, you can almost picture them swaying as they chant like stop-motion Tim Burton characters while this absurd bossa nova beat plays in the background. And we build into the climax. Our main character is triumphant. He says he can finally feel, he can finally belong. Behold my new dominion. At last they hear my voice. You almost feel a twinge of sorrow. He can finally be heard. He's crying out in a voice that he doesn't have, but alas, it's very apparent that he is no protagonist. He is not the hero of this tale. His rejection has manifested in this very ominous manner as a maniacal dictator, and the last line is, "There is no being in this world that will dare defy me."
Though the story and the lyrics are up to interpretation, the music is very, very deliberate, extremely deliberate. Like,
absolutely,
we will take a very long time to write 4 measures, and each one of those notes that is played by each one of those instruments is very thoroughly thought out. That level of detail and thoughtfulness is what created the sound of Quiet World. It would not be the same album.
As we traipse lightly into the next song, we're greeted by a much groovier rhythm and a bubbly synth dances around us. This is the Spark of the Archon, a track that serves as the introduction of a new character, the rebellious antithesis to our dictator, Sinister Silence. Archon proves that he can abandon his shackles and contest silence. Not only that, but lead his downtrodden and hopeless compatriots out of the darkness. The theme that sticks out here is that the creations of this world are revealed in these lines to only be shackled by their own misery and their interpretation of their own problems. "Oh misery, you mercilessly keep weight on their wings. They won't fly free. I forget their problems quite easily, and I believe that such a leap will make them see that their troubles are small and worth no woe at all, for there's salt in the sky as I lend myself to the sea." And then as he moves from wind to sea, Archon finds harmony. Now he has seen all that the real world has to offer in all its splendor. And at the end of this track, Archon and Sinister Silence speak to each other directly, and reach the conclusion that a war is inevitable between them. You can tell that the writing was extensive and thought out, so it's no surprise to find out that they started writing in 2011, 4 years before the release. The guitarist Gabe Solomon did a large amount of the writing, and is unfortunately often uncredited in online sources across the board. Gabe Solomon and Miles Yang connected online before their freshman year of college, and bonded very quickly music-wise, and this is actually when the writing process began. Anthony Barone is another name that comes up periodically as someone who helped write a lot of rhythm sections because the drums were all programmed in Superior Drummer. For those who don't know, Superior Drummer is a very famous MIDI drum kit similar to Nolly's Get Good Drums, because no one actually wants to talk to a drummer in real life. I'm joking obviously because I'm a bassist and I shouldn't throw stones in a glass house. Speaking of, Sharif Cliff Addo is cited as well as the original bassist, who also did early work with a band called Aviations that disbanded in 2025, much to my own and many fans' devastation. Poe Hawk, a very technical but also expressive lead guitarist, also joined the fray in 2015. The common thread here is the Berklee College of Music, which you'll find to be a common origin story for a majority of jazz and progressive bands, to a degree where I'm surprised that Berklee has a graduation rate that actually outpaces the national average. But it makes perfect sense to me that when you get a population of talented musicians all in the same classes, under the same roof, that eventually some of them will collaborate and create something special. And so, Native Construct was born. At one point they were suite mates, Barone, Edens, Yang, and Solomon in 2 rooms with bunk beds.
I remember sitting in the audience in Tech, and we had the orchestra there for the first time, and just this huge wall of sound hit us, and I looked at Julian, our swing, and just wide-eyed looked at each other like, whoa, we are in something special.
Archon is sentenced to the gallows for his rebellion. The track passage paints visions of Harmony, his love, whom he will never see again, and Misery is his eternal tormentor. You can almost imagine a depiction of Hades' underworld in which the foul winds howl, his soul is wreathed in black, and his will breaks to a point where his self-doubt consumes him. He admits he's wrong, but refuses to beg for forgiveness, still exhibiting his stubbornness until the end. Meanwhile, Sinister Silence performs what I imagine to be the villain's song, where he is aided by a chorus of his creations. Perhaps he's sitting at a piano with a candelabro, and he gives us the story of his love. And not only is this the song that I've listened to the most on this album, it's called Your Familiar Face, but also it's a perfect representation of his own ego and self-centeredness, because even in his devastation at his rejection, he never once describes his love or anything about her. While the Archon spoke lovingly of Harmony and embracing her and his pining away, Sinister only tells of the things that he himself gave away. It's all from the perspective of naming what he has done for her, writing letters and sharing his own secrets, and you did this to me, you have caused me to become sinister and torn. Not only is there no accountability for his own actions, but he doesn't even seem to know or like her as a person, but more as a vessel for his love that he was filling continuously in hopes of gaining something in return. And so he retreats further into himself.
I still think to myself and wonder if this
this was worth it.
Come Hell or High Water is perhaps the most theatrical of all the songs on this album. There's this jagged, taunting violin, almost a ballroom waltz, and it's no coincidence that the line, "I still can't believe that my life is now constantly pulsed in 3" comes up, a reference to 3/4 time signature, also known as waltz time. And here we see more of Archon slipping further and further into madness. Misery still tortures him mercilessly, and as the band themselves has stated, this is their most Tim Burton track. Obviously, that also includes the noted musician and composer Danny Elfman. Wait a second, let me try something. Yeah, that's what I thought. Moving on to Chromatic Lights may feel like a filler track to some, but it's a good representation of a round where a few guitars are cycling through this melody that you heard from the very beginning. I mean, it's the first real melody you hear on the album in mute, and it leads us perfectly, I think, into Chromatic Aberration. Despite it being the last track on the album, Chromatic Aberration was actually the first song that Gabe Solomon and Miles Yang would write together. And most of the writing was done before they even started their first semester, and before they even decided that this would be a concept album. And it's not a track that either of them look fondly back on, but from the listener's perspective, I see this as the creative center for the album. You can literally feel the different ideas creatively being brought to life. This is their origin point, and it's almost cathartic to have it be a conclusion to all the ideas that it created, represented in their original form, but at the end. And our story doesn't seem to have a clear and happy ending, as no one would expect it to. After listening to every interview possible, it's very obvious to me that, as I stated before, the story was meant to be generally open-ended and up to interpretation. But allow me to interject and give my own interpretation while I have your attention, and postulate that nobody wins in this scenario. Sinister Silence will always be at odds with the Archon, who is constantly tormented by misery, as is his nature. Remember that the Archon was created by Sinister Silence. And not to get too caught up in the meaning here, but hear me out. As a Christian, the idea of God creating man in his own image is not lost in my own interpretation. Knowing what we know about Sinister Silence, how could he have possibly created a being that could be different from himself, even if that means being constantly tormented by misery? What if the Archon is created in his own image, and they are actually more similar than different in the end? They both have rebelled against the world that they were forced into, and both unhappily reach the conclusion that they don't belong here, but escape isn't possible. There's a cycle of rebellion that eventually leads to acceptance, but the circle just continues to spin. A rejection of your origin, the hope of moving out of it in your own way, and the eventual realization that you unfortunately belong here, and need to realize the roots of your creation and the path that exists before you. Am I getting too deep? Perhaps. Would Miles, Gabe, Max, and Robert be excited to know that someone had put this much thought and time into their work? Absolutely. And the real answer is they don't know the answer themselves, but the act of interpretation is enough. Some say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but interpretation and speculation have to be pretty high up there too. The mixing was done by Rich Mauser. The mastering was done by the famous Jamie King from North Carolina, who has a credit list so long that it's not even possible to name all the bands, but I promise, if you have a progressive metal band from anywhere near the East Coast, this guy has worked with them before. However, Jamie also helped them record the vocals, and the rest was all bedroom recordings, which isn't necessarily rare in this day and age, but is still impressive nonetheless. Vocalist Robert Edens got his degree in electronic production and design, which explains how the album ends up sounding so polished and cohesive for a debut release. There's a fine balancing act of being epic, grandiose, and almost mythical in nature, but also being concise and making something that sticks in your head. Running through the album recently made me realize how none of the songs ever overstay their welcome. If you were to tell me that bands like Dream Theater, Between the Buried and Me, and Haken were interesting, but they tend to drag out their songs and participate in musical wankery, as some would describe it, I would understand why, because despite these being bands I love, I can at least admit that these aspects of the genre aren't for everyone. There is a reason prog fans get the reputation of being pretentious music snobs, and I'm here to make sure that stereotype never goes away. But if you were to apply this criticism to Quiet World, I would have to respectfully disagree. There's never a moment where you will be checking the time, checking how much longer a song goes on, wondering how it's possible that a guitar solo could last for half an album. None of these thoughts have crossed your mind because it's such a tasteful delivery of such a massive undertaking. And this isn't simple in any way, don't get it twisted. These compositions are intricate and deliver something insanely complex, but presented in such a way that your brain doesn't notice. I could easily sing a couple of the choruses from this album, one specifically being the climax of the Spark of the Archon, off the top of my head, just because that's how memorable they are. And I could do it right now, but I respect you and I wouldn't suffer this curse upon my worst enemy, so I will refrain from doing so. But the point still stands. The ability to combine complexity with melodies that are simple enough to stay with you for years is an art form most will never master. So if you guys know my channel, you know I'm all about recommendations. So maybe you just found out about this album, or you've known about it for years but are unsure where to go next. I'll give you some direction here. A band called Others by No One, the aforementioned Aviations, Pohawk's solo work, Pink Lemonade by Closure in Moscow, a solo project known as Resuscitate, and another one-hit wonder called Art by Numbers. These might be able to scratch the itch, but at the end of the day, nothing can truly replace this album. And you'll find yourself coming back to it over and over again, and then you'll truly be one of us. So this is the one album wonder of progressive metal. And it wasn't intentional in any way, but there was a passion, a real drive to create something beautiful, and it happened, and all we have is that shared experience, and I personally think that's special in itself. I don't think Native Construct needs to make another album because we all got to witness something special together, and hopefully this video can let more of us experience that. But at the end of the day, no one is going to understand what Quiet World means to us, and I'm okay with that, and I hope you are too. See you guys next time.